When maintaining your daily wellness rituals is important to you, the change in routine during the summer can feel daunting. Kachava's new travel packs help you stick to your daily ritual, even when you're on the go. Just one packet of Kachava's all-in-one nutrition shake provides complete nutrition with 25 grams of protein, 6 grams of fiber, greens, adaptogens, and much more. So you'll be fueled and ready for wherever life or your summer adventures take you. No fillers, no nonsense. Just the good stuff your body craves. Plus, it actually tastes delicious. But you can try it for yourself because the variety pack includes all 6 delicious fan favorites: chocolate, vanilla, chai, matcha, coconut acai, and strawberry. So instead of worrying about sticking to your daily ritual, simplify it with Kachava. Go to kachava.com and use code NEWS for 15% off. That's KACHAVA.com, code NEWS.
Montreal mourns the loss of a resident and a police officer, while law enforcement investigates motives and a manifesto. This is Now You Know. I'm Rob Snow.
All the news you need to know.
This is Now You Know with Rob Snow on News Radio.
Law enforcement agencies are warning of the potential of copycat shootings after yesterday's attack in Montreal. 3 people died, including a Montreal police officer, a local bystander, and the perpetrator. The Globe and Mail is reporting the RCMP sent a bulletin to multiple police agencies across the country, warning about possible copycats, citing a manifesto that encourages people to shoot police officers. With the latest from Montreal, we start with this report from Johanny Bouffard of City News.
It was just very terrifying.
Pretty rough, very disturbed because of what happened here.
Mohamed Lamine Ben Redouane killed in the line of duty during a Montreal shooting on Monday. The 34-year-old joined the SPVM in 2021, and they say his passing is a great loss for the police force. His sense of duty, dedication, and professionalism will forever be remembered, they added. The Center for Israel and Jewish Affairs confirmed that Michael Moshe Mizrahi was the civilian killed. In a social media post writing that he was a beloved member of Montreal's Jewish community and an innocent victim of today's events.
Unfortunately, because there were police officers and civilians that were fatally shot, so anyone who comes into the neighborhood has to identify themselves to make sure that they live in the neighborhood before they're allowed over the police tape line.
People were finally allowed back outside around 3:30 Monday afternoon after having to shelter in place. A shooting in Montreal left 3 people dead, including a police officer and a civilian, and sparked a major police operation in Côte-des-Neiges. Residents described the situation that was difficult to comprehend as it unfolded. The perimeter was set just 1 block away from a grocery store where customers were locked down on Monday.
Almost 3 or 4 minutes after I walked in, I was shoved into the back of the storage area, and we were told to be very quiet, that there was an active shooter in the area, and that we needed to find a place to just hide.
Following that incident, several videos were shared on social media. In them, you see police officers being shot and literally collapsing right before our eyes. I was a cop in Montreal. I just want to urge us not to become desensitized by this. These are human beings. There's an investigative aspect to this, but there's also a human aspect. We must not become desensitized to this. That's why I'm asking people not to share these videos. The investigation will be conducted. We'll get to the bottom of this, and that's the focus right now. Flags have been lowered to half-mast at Montreal Police Headquarters in memory of Officer Mohamed Lamine Ben Redouane.
I'm sorry for the officer that's down and anyone else that's injured or deceased. It's very unfortunate.
Johanny Bouffard, City News, Montreal.
There are reports the gunman's manifesto expresses a hatred of women and references the incel movement. The bulletin from the RCMP says the manifesto has ties to Alberta. Quebec's police watchdog is investigating the shooting, while the Quebec Provincial Police have launched a parallel criminal probe. At a news conference in Montreal, the head of public safety for that city, Jim Bies, was one of several Quebec officials to offer condolences and praise the actions of the police.
My condolences to the family, friends, our entire police force, who every day wake up with one sole mission: to protect us and to hope that they make it home safely to their families. I want to take the opportunity as well to thank the Quebec government, our premier, the ministers here at the table, for their strong collaboration in the last little while, but also as we pass this unimaginable, incredibly difficult moment for all of Montrealers, particularly those that protect and serve.
Ian Lafreniere is the Minister of Domestic Security in the Quebec government. He told news reporters this attack wasn't terrorism and that investigators are working alongside other intelligence and law enforcement agencies across the country.
As soon as we had enough information, the structure de gestion policière contre le terrorisme was launched, was in place, gathering intelligence from different agencies. So this is a Canadian program. We just want to make sure that we share all intelligence, all information that we get. So it was on, but finally it was excluded in terms of a terrorism attack. That have been said, the reason why we create a Ministère de la Sécurité intérieure is because we want to gather more intelligence. Instead of working by silos, we want to work all together. This is one of the purpose of the Ministère de la Sécurité intérieure, because yes, the threat is different. We do see what's going on in different places. Our world has changed, unfortunately, so we need to react to that. But Montreal is a safe city, and that's the reason why we're reacting today, because this is so surprising, because this is not the Montreal that we know about.
On any possible connections of this manifesto to Alberta and online videos and claims the civilian may have been shot by the police, Mr. Lafreniere had very little to say about that.
There have been some rumors, there have been some information stating that the civilian was shot by a police officer. This is not that kind of information that we can share at this moment. It's really the Bureau des Enquêtes Indépendantes that will conduct the investigation, and this is their duty to conduct the investigation with the SQ. This is the neutral organization that was involved with that, and we'll see what are the results. But for the moment, we're not going to do any comments about that.
Thank you. Last question. Can you explain how investigators are looking at how this could be related to movement outside the province?
But first of all, because of the event, and I'm sure you've been through the day and you saw that it was taking a while. So during that moment, for sure, all the different agencies have been involved in that, including la structure de gestion policière contre le terrorisme, and this is all the partners, including our CMP. So they gathered intelligence information, whether or not we could have believed it could have been linked to something else. Rumors earlier were talking about an event in Saskatchewan that could have been linked to. So, and believe me, it's not the case at all.
This attack in Montreal marks the third time a Canadian police officer has been killed in the line of duty this month. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know. This is News Radio.
You have questions.
Now You Know with Rob Snow has the answers.
On News Radio.
He's with us every Tuesday to try and make sense of some of the stories that are in the news. Professor Ian Lee is back with us from the Sprott School of Business at Carleton University. Good day to you.
Good afternoon, Rob.
I want to start with this story out of British Columbia, where you have thousands of condo units sitting empty, new condo construction that is slow to a crawl. Some developers could go under. It would seem to me they built too many condos and speculators don't want to buy them. So now you have the federal government, the Carney government, and the EB government in BC putting in $3.2 billion. They're going to buy thousands of these condos, said they're going to turn them into affordable housing. Critics call it a bailout. What do you call it?
Of course it is. You know, I don't want to sound like an ideologue. I don't belong to any political party, but, you know, I did work in banking for 9 years, and I've been to lots of countries around the world, successful and unsuccessful countries. And what I've noticed is those countries that are not successful or doing far less successful is that they tend to use the government policy, government money, to try to offset the impact of the market. The whole point of the market, this isn't ideology. Nobel Prizes have been awarded in this, and this is from my practical experience in a bank. Not all companies are equally efficient. Not all companies make high-quality products. Everybody knows that. Everybody knows that. Some companies make inferior products. And so guess what we do when we discover that as buyers and consumers? Because there's all kinds of websites now out there warning people about shoddy merchandise and shoddy companies. Well, we stop buying it from them. And what happens to those companies if they don't turn it around and solve their problems with their buyers, their customers quickly? They fail. They go to business. This is the whole Darwinian thing, okay? And so the market punishes, drives lousy companies out of business. They go bankrupt. And that's the essence of the market economy. Not all companies succeed. And for those who say this is ideology, go to your computer and go to the Government of Canada and look up the bankruptcy statistics. And it tells you how many companies failed last year, what was their average size, what province were they in, etc. So anyone who says it's ideology or theory that companies fail don't know what they're talking about. Companies fail regularly, and the market weeds them out. It's Darwinian. And so what the government is trying to do here is, because there are some condo developers that were incompetent. Let's be clear. That's what it is. Just like not all players make it in the NFL or in the NHL. And then guess what happens? They get cut. It's the equivalent of going bankrupt, okay? So what the government of Canada is doing, and the government of BC is saying, oh my God, these few companies here, not all of them, by the way. Most of the developers made good decisions, and they built good buildings, and they priced them well, and they understood the market, and they sold their product. But some didn't. So the government is stepping in, saying we're going to save them. In other words, they're zombie companies. This is what China's been doing for years. Zombie companies are companies that are not competitive. And people don't want to buy their products. So the government steps in and keeps bailing them out. Instead of letting them go into liquidation, their resources get released.
What if you have a housing affordability issue? You have 2,000 condos. They're sitting empty. Nobody's living in them. What's wrong with the government saying, you know what, we'll buy them and we'll rent them out at a more reasonable rate and we'll give people a place to live? What's wrong with that?
Here is what's wrong with it, okay? And it's not about helping people who are homeless, okay? Let's get rid of that. That's how people demagogue. Oh, what about this? And what about people dying? This isn't about that. It's about whether this is the most appropriate way to deal with the housing crisis. There's a housing shortage because, and I've said this in my presentations using data from CMHC, the 10 largest cities, and Vancouver's one of them, have harmed construction of homes through very deliberately high development charges on the developers to build new housing units, and incredible delays, red tape that takes a lot longer to build the house. But people can say that's just theory. Let me tell you what's wrong with this policy. By the government coming in, and they're going to give a price. Everyone agrees on that. They're not doing this for free. They're going to pay the developer a price. And then Hedy Fry said this is going to make prices go down. No, this is going to make prices go up. Everybody, listen. What the government is doing is fixing the price at the price they pay this condo developer, which is way above the market price. Okay, because they said they can't sell them. That is nonsense. Anybody can sell anything if you cut the price low enough. I can sell anything in this world if I cut the price low enough. So what they're saying is the developers don't want to reduce their prices and take a loss. So they've conned the government into paying above market price for these condos. And so what that does is it puts a floor now on the price of condos in Vancouver. The prices will not go below that because other developers are going to say, hey, that's the market minimum price now for a condo. Because they're so unwitting about it and clueless, what they've done is they've ensured prices will not go down in Vancouver. This is upside down and backward.
Okay. Well, look, we have to stop there on that particular topic. 10 years since Brexit, Professor, 10 years since Brexit. Is the UK better off 10 years later? I'll ask you that when we come back. This is News Radio. Professor Ian Lee is with the Sprott School of Business at Carleton University. He's here every Tuesday. 10 years ago today was the Brexit vote. Leave, 51.9, remain 48.1. I bet you remember that, watching that, Professor, when that happened. So it's been 10 years. Is the UK better off now that it's not part of the EU?
I want 3 quick points. Number one, I support free trade and free trade agreements. That's why I'm so opposed to Trump on tariffs. Tariffs are the antithesis of free trade. Free trade agreements remove tariffs. People like Trump put tariffs on. So they're the opposite of each other. They're not 2 different subjects. Tariffs are the opposite of free trade agreements. Free trade agreements take tariffs off. Okay. So I believe in free trade agreements. Number 2, Brexit was not about whether they're going to be better off or worse off. They were opposed to a myriad of other policies of the European Union, which has become an extraordinarily regulatory state. In fact, the current ECB governor says that Europe is in, Christine Lagarde says that Europe is in an existential crisis, as did the former governor, because of their excessive regulation, including they demanded that Britain take a certain number of illegal immigrants that they didn't want to take. So that's why they left. But now let's go to the third question, which is really what you're asking me. And there's several studies out, I've read them, saying that it was a terrible decision of Britain because it cost them 8% of GDP. Well, Evans, I'm going to throw a name out to everybody. I hope they Google and go read this guy. Ambrose Evans Pritchard, a very good British name, you know. Ambrose Evans Pritchard, writes at the Telegraph, global economic correspondent, graduate of a place called Oxford, you know. And he did his master's at the Sorbonne in French about, guess what? The flaws of the European Union structure. So this guy, and he, by the way, he speaks apparently impeccable French, and he, of course, speaks the Queen's English. And he's a really, really smart guy. His father was a Don at Oxford.
Okay.
Anyways, okay. I'm just giving you the background. He wrote this column today. People should read it, where he goes through and he just ruthlessly deconstructs these claims that Britain lost 8%. He says, if you go and look at these studies, what they did is they put United States in as a comparator country. Well, first off, the U.S. is not part of the European Union. Secondly, the U.S. is skating circles around everybody, including every last country in Europe. And so he said, comparing the UK to U.S. and saying, look, they're not doing as well, that proves that they screwed up on Brexit. He says it does no such thing. You got to compare apples to apples. So when he does it, he argues, and Allianz, a huge French global bank, also did a study. They estimate that the cost was about 2% of exiting Europe, the Brexit cost. And then he showed the growth figures, GDP, since Brexit until now. UK has grown faster than France, faster than Italy, and really faster than Germany. So I'm going to answer you this way, Rob. I think the jury is still out. Yes, they did slightly less well because of the 2% decline if you accept the Allianz study. But then you look at all the benefits that they're no longer subject to all the ridiculous regulations of Europe that inhibit economic growth. So I think that the jury is out. There's be more studies published in the years ahead because this fascinates economists. I do believe in free trade generally as a generic statement. I just don't believe in the European model of free trade. I believe in the North American model, the Kuzma model. That, I think, is a much better, a much superior model, and that's why I disagree with Trump on tariffs.
Okay. Great to hear from you this week. We'll catch up next
pleasure.
week again and see what's making news then. Thank you, Professor. Professor Ian Lee with us every week from the Sprott School of Business at Carleton University in Ottawa today. To Alberta we go next, or Focus Alberta, here on News Radio.
Critical thinking is not dead.
Now you know with Rob Snow.
Returns on News Radio.
It's our Tuesday Newsday panel. That means it's time for Focus Alberta with Matt Solberg, partner, New West Public Affairs. Matt Solberg, welcome back. Great to hear from you today.
Thank you for having me.
Along with Rob Breakenridge, broadcaster, podcaster, contributor to the Calgary Herald. Rob, welcome back. Good to hear from you.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks for having me.
On the 10th anniversary of the Brexit referendum. This is one analysis in the news media today. This is from Axios. Britain remains marooned in a low-growth cycle, saddled with trade friction, high prices, strained public services, and a hypersensitive electorate that tolerates virtually no political failure. Other than that, a smashing success. Matt Solberg, what warnings do you think are there for Alberta from the Brexit case on the Brexit anniversary?
Well, look, I think, if there's been any productivity increase out of Britain over the last 10 years, it's been in their manufacturing of new prime ministers. We're looking at 7 in a decade. And so setting aside the fact that, the economic upside that had been argued for by Brexiteers a decade ago has not come to fruition. And in fact, despite Great Britain not being landlocked, as Alberta would be, the UK is, a roughly 6 to 8% smaller economy. And so the bottom line is, Alberta may be considering, heading down a similar path as Great Britain did a decade ago. And I would argue with even fewer facts on the table than were available to those voting a decade ago in the UK. But I'm concerned that these lessons and these warnings, will be ignored.
Why do you say that, Matt?
Well, I mean, look, I think right now opinions on this have been, on either side of the question, have been primarily rooted in emotion. You see, the Forever Canadian petition, and just sort of the name of it is it's an emotion-based argument. What we haven't seen, and I know that there is some work being done to put together credible numbers, is the facts. And when you have proponents of separation claiming that this can all be done for roughly $5 or $6 billion. And with little to no downside economically, I think the public deserves the facts on this, and I think that has been absent. What we can look at in the absence of that right now is history, and the UK provides a pretty stark picture of what this could look like.
What about you, Rob? What warnings do you see perhaps for Alberta from 10 years of Brexit?
Well, I think there's an obvious parallel, just sort of big picture about, this kind of a vote and it being a vessel for a lot of frustration with the status quo. And I think you saw that 10 years ago in the UK, just that frustration with where things were going, or that there wasn't an opportunity for change. And I think it was just a way of sort of sending a message to the EU in that case, or just sending a message that, we're not happy with the status quo. And I think you're seeing some element of that with what's happening in Alberta. So there's that obvious parallel there. I mean, look, there's some clear differences between Alberta's situation and the situation the UK was in. I think maybe there's some closer analogies to the Scottish independence referendum when you look at Alberta's situation. I think there are those in Alberta who would maintain that, look, Alberta's got a point of leverage, a point of strength with our resources and our wealth, and that makes it different. I think that gets to kind of what Matt's talking about, where they're really selling, at least the separatist side, this sort of easy economic path to prosperity as soon as we can unshackle ourselves from Canada. So that's where you see, I think, where there's some apt parallels, where you saw similar kinds of promises that the UK would save money, the UK would thrive once they got unshackled from the EU, and that hasn't happened. So I think there's a lesson to be learned in terms of what the outcome is, but I think it's just also that lesson, like, pay attention to where there's anger and frustration, and if people see this as an opportunity just to kind of give a middle finger to the status quo, the people might do so, and I think you just sort of need to prepare for that possibility, and how do you counter that? How do you give people a different way maybe of expressing that frustration?
Not, Rob, that everything can be compared, the UK and Brexit, Alberta and this referendum this fall. But in a lot of the commentary, especially in the last 24 hours with the announcement of the resignation of Keir Starmer, people are wondering, has the UK become ungovernable? Okay. And I've been thinking about that because I have read, when was the last time an Alberta premier finished a term? Who was the last premier to finish a term? Rob, do you know offhand? Do you remember?
Well, depending on how you're measuring it, Rachel Notley won an election and then lost an election. But, otherwise, certainly you look at Conservative premiers, the last to win an election and then win another election, you're going back to Ralph Klein.
Right. So I guess it's this idea, is Alberta becoming ungovernable, do you think?
Well, it's an interesting question. And, you could see this situation where, lose the referendum, but they could win control of the UCP. So obviously, I think a lot of what's guided Danielle Smith has been kind of that element within conservative Alberta politics. And I think she's tried to, we talk about learning lessons. I think she's tried to learn a lesson of, what happened to Jason Kenney more recently and more specifically, and how do I make sure that doesn't happen to me? And so you get these different elements and factions within the conservative movement, some more organized and motivated than others. And there's the possibility of a leadership review or challenge to her leadership come November. So, it's definitely still, I think, a real factor in conservative politics, and by extension, if they're going to govern the province in terms of how Alberta's governed.
Okay. When we come back, a stampede swiping, and are the fun police ruining the greatest outdoor show on earth? When we return, this is News Radio.
Now you know with Rob Snow continues on News Radio.
Back with Focus Alberta now. Matt Solberg, partner, New West Public Affairs. Rob Breakenridge, broadcaster, podcaster, contributor to the Calgary Herald. A little more than a week away now from Stampede time in Calgary. And lots of sniping back and forth between the Premier and the Mayor of Calgary, Jeremy Farkas, about new noise controls that are being in place for some of the outdoor shows at the greatest outdoor show on earth. In fact, we have some audio of the Mayor of Calgary. Let's play that, Curtis, please.
By now, you've seen the coordinated smear campaign from out-of-town politicians by asking the big tents to use the same rules in place at Coachella, Lollapalooza, and all of the other world-class festivals. And that's the first piece of bullshit. We're not talking about Stampede at all. We're talking about a few off-site tents. In the last few years, the tents were given a special exemption. Meanwhile, their windows shook and broke, their shelves rattled, and music ran on weeknights until 2 or 3 a.m. Thousands of Calgarians raised their concerns. The city chose to listen to the people. The changes are modest. On weeknights, concerts now need to wrap up by about 12:30 a.m. Calgary still allows outdoor music later than anywhere else in North America. This wasn't a last-minute change. The big tents knew in February, but what isn't...
Okay. I think that's good. I think that's... Okay. I think that's good. But nevertheless, I have to get your take on this, Matt Solberg. What do you think about this back and forth on the fun police are at it again? What do you think?
Well, look, I think a lot of this is a little bit of pre-stampede noise. I think this is a continuation of perhaps some political animosity between some of the principles of this conversation that existed long before this noise bylaw. Calgary Stampede has, overcome some pretty tremendous adversity in years past. 13 years ago, just weeks after this devastating flood, the single largest natural disaster in Canada's history, the Calgary Stampede was held, and it was one of the most successful years on record. I look at this year and I think come hell or high volume, the Stampede is going to go and it's going to be a good time. So I'm not too concerned about this back and forth. I think the city feels it needs to respond to some complaints, and I think others are rightly pointing out the message this sends to those who are coming to experience the greatest outdoor show on earth, and including live music. There's a lot of money, obviously, tied up in all of this, and I think both sides probably have a pretty valid perspective.
Okay. What do you think, Rob?
Yeah, I would agree. And it sounds like there's some debate happening at Calgary City Hall today, and maybe they'll find some compromise. I think it's important for people to understand, like, there's sort of the main site of Calgary Stampede. Like, if you're coming to Calgary, you're going to Stampede, there's kind of one general area you go to, which is just sort of south or southeast of downtown. This is a separate area that was set up on the west side of downtown, and it was relatively new that they had this Cowboys music festival there. And so I think the issue was that for some of the residential area right around this park, this was brand new to them. And last year and with the previous music festival there, it was a real shock to the system that they weren't used to having that there. And when you've got music blaring on weeknights till 1 or 2 in the morning, it's disruptive. So how do you balance, the impact of Stampede and the importance of Stampede with a pretty clear and detrimental impact on a residential area that really wasn't a part of this previously? So that's kind of the nub of it. And I don't know if there's going to be a resolution here that's going to satisfy everybody. But, just the fact that you've got not just Alberta's Premier weighing in, Pierre Poilievre weighing in, other politicians weighing in, it is a little strange to see that. But I think it speaks to the importance of the Calgary Stampede, just how much it matters to have a successful festival every year. As Matt says, we've done so in some really challenging conditions, which just speaks to how much it matters to the community. So I think a lot of this is coming from, I would say, a good place in wanting this to be a successful festival. But again, I think you also need to recognize the reality of what this means for people in the community and in this particular area just on the western edge of downtown. So we'll see if they can come up with some kind of compromise. I would think that there's something that can at least get close to trying to satisfy both sides in this.
Okay. The Prime Minister is going to be there in probably a week and a half, flipping pancakes, wearing the cowboy hat. Pierre Poilievre will be there and very visible, I'm sure. Do you expect Stampede, though, to be a kind of a magnet for organizers from both sides of the referendum campaign, Matt?
I think we'll see a bit of it, but I think the reality is, if you're campaigning, either to leave Canada or to stay, that there may be better places for you to be than at the Calgary Stampede. I think a lot of folks that are coming to Stampede are likely not of the demographic that shows up in polling as being wanting to leave Canada. I think if you want to find those folks, there's a lot of community events throughout the province, a lot of rural rodeos and events like that. So I expect there to be a presence, but I don't know that that it's going to be a disruptive presence. I wouldn't expect that.
What do you think, Rob?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think what you're going to see, you'll see Premier Daniel Smith very visible. I expect you'll see Pierre Poilievre very visible. And I would imagine you'll probably see Mark Carney very visible. And so I think just as that political stage, I think that's why maybe there's so much vested interest in this being a big, vibrant, successful kind of festival. But no, I think if you're pitching the cause or the case for Alberta separation, I don't expect there will be much of that. It's not an event for rallies. I don't know there's any separatist leader who has the kind of profile or platform to draw a big crowd, draw a lot of that kind of political attention that you typically see with Stampede. So, but it kind of looms over the conversation in Alberta. So I think it'll be interesting to see whether it makes its presence felt in other ways.
Okay, when we come back, a little bit more of provincial politics in Alberta. The NDP is running ads. Ask about that when we return. This is News Radio.
Now you know with Rob Snow continues on News Radio.
Talking Alberta politics with Matt Solberg and Rob Breakenridge today here on Now You Know. I heard this ad for the first time yesterday. It features Ned Nenshi, the leader of the Alberta NDP. Kind of get to know Ned Nenshi. Let's listen to this a little bit.
Authorized by the Alberta NDP, albertandp.ca.
I grew up working in my family's motel and laundromat. We counted every penny. I'm Ned Nenshi. Today, families across Alberta are doing the same. That's why the Alberta NDP has a plan to put money back in your pocket, save you money on auto insurance, raise the minimum wage, cut your electricity rates by 10%. My parents taught me that every dollar counts. Now, we're going to help yours go further.
Okay. So, Matt, why am I hearing that ad, and what do you think of it?
Well, I think that the NDP obviously see an opportunity here, or perhaps a vulnerability on their opponent's side when it comes to this referendum. I don't think it's a secret that Naheed Nenshi hasn't exactly lit the imaginations of Albertans on fire since he became NDP leader. I think the polling shows that. However, if you dig a little deeper into some of the data, you do see movement on approval ratings for both Nenshi and the Premier, and it's a pretty volatile time. So there's that side of things. The other part of this, and I think it's a little more technical, is the rules around referendum advertising. They give the NDP an opportunity to spend during this period in a way that third-party advertisers cannot. So okay. I think that they just see this as a good time to make efficient use of party donations and cement some opinions on Naheed Nenshi as the fighter for Canada.
Okay, about a minute and a half. Rob Breakenridge, what do you think?
Well, I think clearly this is, some internal politics. I think there's been some frustration from NDP supporters, sort of those on the progressive left in Alberta, that Naheed Nenshi hasn't been making a lot of traction, that the NDP should be in a much better place. I mean, you see Premier Smith's own approval rating is kind of in record low territory for her, and yet the UCP still is polling ahead of the NDP. I mean, some polls have it pretty close, but I think there's a sense of why aren't we doing better? If there's all of this frustration with Smith and the UCP and all of these issues, or there's scandals that have kind of plagued the government, like around health contracts, why aren't the NDP doing better? So I think there's been some pressure on Nenshi to step up his game a little bit, and I just think you're seeing those efforts. Look, Naheed Nenshi's a known political quantity in Alberta. It's really challenging to say, hey, I'm introducing myself to you, because he's been around for a long time. So that was kind of the double-edged sword of Naheed Nenshi for the NDP. You're getting a known political quantity, but one that still has some political baggage. So we'll see how much traction this gets, but I think a lot of it stems from those questions. Why aren't the NDP doing better right now?
Really interesting. Okay. Great to hear from the both of you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Rob.
Thank you.
Yeah, Matt Solberg. Partner, New West Public Affairs. Rob Breakenridge, Calgary Herald contributor, podcaster, longtime broadcaster on the radio. This is News Radio.
It's time to talk back.
On Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now
And have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
Welcome to Talkback. It's 2 hours of debate and discussion on the big issues of the day. Today's topic is online safety and regulating the internet. Online safety, regulating the internet is a very important topic. Big, meaty topic today. And I want to know if you're concerned at all or aware at all about what the federal government is planning to do to regulate the internet. To regulate the internet in the name of public safety, in the interest of keeping us safe from the harms that can come from being online. 1-833-668-2577. 1-833-668-2577. There are critics of the Carney government in Ottawa who are accusing this Liberal government of building, quote unquote, a surveillance state. Think about that. A surveillance state. That's a damning accusation. And essentially the accusation is the government is seeking to know much more about our activities online. And it is seeking to give much greater power to law enforcement or intelligence agencies so they can know what we've been doing online, where we go, what we do, what we're interested in, who we talk to, our opinions. And to back up these claims about a surveillance state, to issue these warnings about a surveillance state, they point to two pieces of legislation. First of all, you have Bill C-22. That's the so-called Lawful Access Bill that was fast-tracked to the House of Commons on the very last sitting day, Thursday of last week. Liberals used their majority to shut down debate. And then there's C-34, which is the new bill about regulating social media. The bill that includes the age limit of 16 in order to access social media. Concerns about that as well. And one of the big concerns is the creation of something called the Digital Safety Commission. If you have been following these news stories, reading news items in the media about them, have concerns about them, we'd like to know what you're concerned about. You can call right now, 1-833-668-2577. Let me break things down just a little bit for you. Give you a better sense of what has some people so worried about what's in these two pieces of legislation and why they accuse the government of trying to build a surveillance state. First of all, you have this Lawful Access Bill, C-22, which the government vowed to pass unchanged, but in the end did water down the legislation a little bit, but certainly not enough to satisfy its critics. This bill would expand police powers and the powers of intelligence agencies over our digital communications. It would do that through what's known as metadata, retaining metadata. So under the proposals in the bill, telecom companies like your cell phone carrier or your internet service provider, other companies that provide digital communications like messaging apps, email providers, social media platforms, cloud-based communication systems, online marketplaces, gaming platforms, they would have to retain your metadata for 6 months. Now, that was one of the climb downs of the government. It was supposed to be 12 months. Now it's going to be 6 months. But this is something the police and the intelligence agencies say is desperately needed in Canada in the digital age. They have to have access to this data to help in their investigations, criminal investigations, national security investigations. But critics say it's far too broad. And it orders these companies to retain a database of the online activity of every Canadian. Another major concern for civil society groups is what's known as technical capability orders. What is that? Well, listen to this. This bill will give the public safety minister the authority to order these companies to build technical capabilities to allow law enforcement and the intelligence community to access data that it wouldn't otherwise have access to. It's been described as a backdoor mandate, that the government wants to force these companies to build backdoors into their systems to gain access to information that would otherwise, for example, be encrypted. There's been a lot of pushback from technology companies over that. And some have said if this goes ahead, they might not do business in Canada anymore. This so-called secret backdoor order would also be subject to a gag order. The companies would never be allowed to tell Canadians they've been ordered by the government to help the government gain access to whatever information they're looking for. What do you think so far? What do you think so far? 1-833-668-2577. Your metadata saved for 6 months at the behest of the government and the police and intelligence agencies. Companies forced to compromise their own encryption technology by secret order of the government and never, ever be allowed to tell you about it. That's lawful access. Then there's the new social media bill, C-34, the one that would impose the age verification system to access social media. Among the concerns raised by the critics of the legislation is that by forcing people to use some form of ID to verify they're old enough to access social media, the government is, in effect, creating the infrastructure for a sort of national ID checking regime, what some would call digital ID. And one of the worries is right now it's all about social media and regulating social media, keeping children safe from social media. But once third parties, technology companies, or even the government has all of this information in digital form, well, what would stop the government from expanding its use? Do you want to have to show ID to access the internet in Canada? Is a common question that is asked. What do you think? When these concerns are put to the government's response so far has been, you are wearing a tinfoil hat. You are a tinfoil hatter. You are engaging in conspiracy theories. But that doesn't stop the critics from saying this government is piece by piece creating a surveillance state. Is that how you see it? Just how do you see it? Based on what you know. 1-833-668-2577 to have your say. Very juicy topic today. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know. It's Talkback on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Digital safety or surveillance state. The government in Ottawa is being accused by critics of building what amounts to a surveillance state with new laws coming on things like metadata, social media regulations, age verification systems, controls for online speech. The social media bill, for example, I just want to get this out there right out of the gate. It would create, and the government's been trying to do this through multiple pieces of legislation and for years, something called the Digital Safety Commission. And there are concerns about the power that this agency would have over things like free speech on the internet. What would its job be when it says it would gather complaints about material on the internet and issue reports about content on the internet? Because this commission would have the power to decide what is harmful content. Well, what's its definition going to be of harmful content? Critics note that there are already hate speech laws in Canada. And they're concerned that this Digital Safety Commission of Canada would move beyond that and it would end up regulating speech that, might be offensive, might be controversial, but legal, and would be able to do so with very little oversight. And that's yet one more reason why the Carney government is being accused of creating a surveillance state. But what do you think? Because I say it is a damning accusation. A surveillance state. And yet I've read so much stuff about that in the last few days that the government wants more and more power to monitor people's online activities and perhaps regulate and police what people in this country can say on the internet. What do you think? What do you think? Have your say. This is News Radio Talkback. I'm Rob Snow. We start with Wade is in Sylvan Lake, Alberta. Hello, Wade.
Hey, Rob. Just give me a sec. I got to get my tinfoil hat on here.
Okay. Well, that's what was said just last week by the government. If you're concerned about these things, you're wearing a tinfoil hat. You're overreacting. Nothing to worry about. It's about public safety, Wade.
Yeah, of course it is. But that's exactly what they're doing. They're building a surveillance state. You look what's happened in the UK, the minute that you give your information out to go on the internet, you're done for. I mean, they will take anything you post or say or whatever, and the next thing you know, somebody will come knocking on your door. That won't happen in an independent Alberta.
Okay, I don't want to get into that, Wade.
Okay,
but I do want to know. Look, the police have been saying we need more modern tools for the digital age, such as the retention of metadata. Does it ease your mind at all that the police say these tools are necessary?
It doesn't ease my mind at all.
No.
I mean, if you people, I think most people are intelligent enough to be able to disseminate between BS and truth. But I guess not all people are. But still, we don't need that. it's bothered me that they introduce a bill and they put all the rainbows and unicorns in the heading, and then you read the details, and that's where all the evil hides.
That's where the nitty gritty is. Wade, you're right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Wade. Yeah, let's go to Waterloo. Emil is in Waterloo. Emil.
Yes. How are you?
Yeah, very good, Emil. What do you think?
Anil. It's actually Anil, just so you know. A-N-I-L.
Sorry.
I apologize.
Sorry about that.
So my concern on this, I've been following this bill. I guess you're referring to Bill C-22 specifically, correct?
C-22 and C-34, which is the newer one, yes. Yeah. But C-22, yes. Go ahead.
Yeah, starting with C-22. So I send an email to my local MP, Bardish Chagar, a while ago, and I didn't get a very good response from her. And being in the cyber security industry from the past, now I'm in the financial services industry, this is a very big infringement on our Charter of Rights and Freedoms. So what we're doing, what the government is doing, I'm not going to say what we're doing, we are trying to fight this as individuals and as collective groups of people. The petitions that went out obviously fell on deaf ears. And this is something that will turn us into not only a surveillance state, but into probably one step towards a communist state, because people will stop expressing their views, and they will stop speaking their mind because they'll be afraid of what will happen to them if it doesn't fit the modality or the mindset of the government in office at that specific time. And
that there will be a chill. There will be a chill on freedom of expression, for example.
Yes, a chill on freedom of expression. It will really make the younger generation suffer tremendously in terms of their creative approach to things and what they express, because we're basically forcing people to follow an agenda which is more communist and more socialist and more anti-democratic.
What about the police saying they need more modern tools to deal with investigations in the digital age?
Yeah, well, this isn't the approach, and all I can say is the smart people who are on the web are going to figure out ways to block their name on the internet and kind of clean up their act. And basically, if they are doing anything wrong or not wrong, they're just going to remove themselves from the internet. So when the police want to go find somebody because they're suspecting them, they're not going to be able to find those people anyway, because those tools exist. Scraping.
Right. Yeah, scraping. In other countries where they've done this, there's been an explosion in the use of VPNs, for example. Thank you for your call. And Neil, 1-833-668-2577. We are just scratching the surface on this one. Everyone, have your say. This is Talkback on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Digital safety or surveillance state. Matt is a first-time caller in Halifax today. Hello, Matt.
Hello.
Hi, Matt. What's your opinion?
I think it's just an incredibly slippery slope. Like, it just opens up the door to further things down the line as well. Not only in like more expansion and in terms of a surveillance state, but also it's the way that they did it in trying to shut down debate and people fighting back against it as well.
That raises a red flag for you. The fact that it came, right up until Thursday, the last day, and then they moved for closure and said, well, that's it. We're going to ram it through.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was just the last minute. And I believe even the Conservatives were saying from their side, it was 100 and some pages. They had multiple other bills to go through. It's not a simple topic. It's a very complex topic to get into.
Oh, yes.
And just to derive it in a bill and try and force it through, like, there's a lot of incredibly, like, I don't know all the backstory and all the IT as well, but it's not just a simple, like, okay, it's done, let's do it. There's a lot of incredibly smart minds that are telling them it's a bad decision to do it as well, right?
Yeah, you have privacy watchdogs, civil liberties organizations, people involved in technology. Law enforcement likes it, though, and law enforcement says it's needed, especially when it comes to things like the metadata retention. What do you think about that?
You can learn an awful lot about metadata metadata. You can learn an awful lot from just having metadata on hand. I would be more concerned not only if they do go through with it, how are you going to maintain that that's secure? Like the metadata itself when it's stored.
When it's stored, where it's stored, how secure is it? Yeah.
Who has access to it?
Who has access to it? That the same has been said about the plan, despite how noble the cause might be, to prevent children from accessing social media. What about people's government-issued ID or fingerprints or facial recognition scans? What about all of that data? Where's that going? How's that being stored? How secure is that?
Where's it going?
Yeah.
Yeah. Where is it going? How's it being stored? Who has access to it? If they did have like the whole vulnerability thing in it for them to access backdoors, I don't know if they hashed that out or like the bill itself contradicts itself when you read through for like encryption versus who's a electronic service provider. Would that be Apple? Would they have access to Apple system or Google system? Or is it just the telecom ones that are shielded from having backdoors, right?
Yeah. As I say, just scratching the surface. I will say C-22 passed the House of Commons. It's not legislation yet. It hasn't gone to the Senate yet. That's the next stop for that. They'll have a look at it. Will it get rubber stamped? Will they take a good long line-by-line look at it? And C-34, the social media bill, was just tabled, so it has a long way to go yet. Thank you for your call. Matt, first-time caller in Halifax.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Digital safety or surveillance state. The government is being accused by some of trying to build a surveillance state with new laws coming on things like metadata retention, social media regulation, online speech. We are asking today, how do you view these measures? Do you see it as government overreach, the start of a surveillance state, or do you think these are legitimate tools needed by law enforcement, needed by the government to keep people safe in the digital age, to keep children safe from the harms of social media? You have lines available, 1-833-668-2577. Rick is in Dartmouth today, Nova Scotia. Hello, Rick.
Hi, Rob. Look, your first caller was off the mark a little bit. It's not tin foil. It's aluminum foil. We haven't used tin foil in years.
Very good.
Point that out.
Very good. You know what? That's a good point. All right. But to the matter at hand, whether your hat is made of tin or aluminum, are you wearing one?
Well, look, here's the scoop. The more power each government has in a left-leaning society, the more power it wants. And we know where unlimited power for left-leaning governments goes. And we've had that example after the Second World War, millions of people killed, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's a terrible idea, and I would use this one example of when Facebook was kind of using this idea for its users. And one day I posted the definition of fascism as stated by Benito Mussolini. And it was in 2018, I believe, and there was no problem with it. The fascism is a combination of the power of corporations and government. Okay, they join forces. That was what he said it was. So then, one day it came up in my memories, and I posted it again, but this time it was during Joe Biden's term, and Facebook flagged it and gave me a strike and put me in Facebook jail. And I said, hey, this was this. So what my point is, that the interpretation of the law or the rule in terms of Facebook is done by people, and the people always have a bias. So we're going down the slippery slope analogy isn't even slippery enough, in my view.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Rick. Thank you. I want to welcome Jay Goldberg. He's been writing about this as a columnist for the Sun papers. Great to hear from you, Jay. Thanks for coming on.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Great to be with you.
Why do you think Canadians should be concerned about legislation, for example, like C-22, the Lawful Access Act?
Well, I would say the most concerning thing about C-22 is the retention of metadata, which is now going to be for a period of 6 months. It was going to be for a year. The government has cut it down. But essentially, your metadata shows where you go, who you're going with, when you're going. It won't show the content of messages that you've sent, but it will track where you've gone and who you've gone places with. And, you know, basically what experts have said, including Dr. Michael Geis, is that this is setting a very slippery slope and an important precedent that we have to be very concerned about because it's not just authorities or the government or, say, police that are going to be able to have this backdoor access to your metadata. You can't open a backdoor without potentially having a backdoor for other nefarious actors to get in, whether it's China or hackers or whatever else. So your privacy, your metadata is not only going to be tracked by the government and authorities are going to be able to access it, but unfortunately, it could be the case that others who want to get in through that back door, because that back door has been opened, could get through that back door. So that's a concern that's been expressed by civil liberties groups across the country, is if you're creating this backdoor access for law enforcement, the backdoor exists, and it exists for everyone to try to access. Now, I'm not saying everyone's going to be able to access it, but some will.
Okay. What do you think about one of these supposed climb downs by the government saying these companies building new language into the bill, amending the bill, saying they wouldn't have to comply if the order would, quote, introduce a systemic vulnerability related to the service? What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, it's all dependent on the language. And what's interesting about with C-22 is that the enforcement is going to be through this Digital Safety Commission, which is going to be appointed by the cabinet minister in charge, which is Mark Miller. And it could be, for the beginning, just one person. It's eventually going to be up to 5. So a lot of it's going to be left up to interpretation. What this Digital Safety Commission says, how they interpret that regulation. This is the problem when you have very vague bills like this, with vague language. It's up to the interpretation of the bureaucrats and the people that cabinet itself appoints. This isn't an officer of parliament. This is someone that's going to be handpicked by the cabinet, and they're going to be the ones figuring out what exactly this language means. So, again, it's one thing for the government to try to say this and try to reassure people a little bit, but ultimately it's a handpicked person in this commissioner that's going to make the final say as to what that regulation actually means. And so once you put it into practice, we're going to have to see. Could it be a bit of a climb down? Maybe. Could it also be that it's interpreted very narrowly by this commissioner? There's a good chance of that too.
You have also argued in your columns, Jay, that this could cost Canadians financially. How so?
Absolutely, it will cost Canadians. The companies have said so because retaining metadata it requires a lot of storage, right? It's 6 months of tracking every Canadian, where they're going, where their cell phones are, who they're going with. All of this information needs to be stored somewhere. And the big carriers, like, whether it's Bell or TELUS or Rogers or, whatever area of the country you're in, they don't have the capacity right now to store 6 months of every Canadian's metadata. And they've said in order to upgrade that, they're going to need a whole lot of extra storage. They're going to have to upgrade their systems. And what they've essentially said to the government is, you should be giving us money to compensate us for having to upgrade our systems. The government's saying we're not prepared to do that. So ultimately, it's going to cost these companies money. And we all know that companies pass costs on to consumers. So Ultimately, not only are you going to be tracked for 6 months, but you could end up with higher bills as a result.
Thank you so much, Jay Goldberg, for breaking down some of your concerns and why you think we should be worried about it. I appreciate your time today.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, he's been writing about that for The Sun. That's Jay Goldberg. This is Talkback. 1-833-668-2577 to have your say on this very important issue today. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
All right, folks, wake up. Lots of phone lines available there for you. Very juicy, very meaty, very important topic for you today around digital safety, or what some are alleging is the beginnings of a surveillance state in this country. With critics say the Carney government is trying to build essentially a surveillance state with these new laws that it is intent on passing. Remember, it has a majority government now. Things on 6 months retention of all your metadata, social media regulation. What does that really mean when you have to go through an age verification system to sign up for a social media account, or new regulations around online speech? How do you view these? 1-833-668-2577. We have 5 lines available. The wait won't be long at all. Herman is in Calgary today. Thanks for waiting, Herman.
Hey, Rob, how you doing?
Yeah, very good, Herman. What do you think here?
Well, Rob, I'm just thinking, what's the danger of all this? Like, they're not taking rights away from us that we've already had, are they?
Well, what about my right to privacy, for example?
Well, what privacy? What you do in your house? They're not going to know that. What you do in your bedroom? They're not going to know that. What you had for dinner last night at a restaurant when you used your credit card? What's the big deal about them knowing that?
Well, why do they need to know that? Why would they need to know that, let alone retain it for, they wanted to retain it for a year. The law enforcement wanted to retain it for 2 to 3 years.
Yeah. Do you know what just happened in Montreal yesterday, Rob? Sorry if I'm a little upset.
I'm very aware of what happened in Montreal. I'm very aware of what happened in Montreal.
And if they were watching him and watching those type of sites, okay, maybe that guy wouldn't have been radicalized. Because there's a lot of radicalization going on the internet. I go to work 2 days ago, and I got to look at some guy's truck that says F Israel. That's his decal. Okay? And you don't think that guy was radicalized on the internet?
Okay. So because of, and it's a very good point that you raised, and I was going to raise this myself. Okay, because there's no doubt that the metadata of the perpetrator of that attack in Montreal will probably be very useful to law enforcement or to the intelligence agencies. They'll be very interested in where that guy went, who he talked to. Was he talking to anybody at all? Was he staying by himself? Whatever the case might be. But because there's the potential for something like that to happen, does that mean everyone in Canada's metadata has to be stored somewhere? For 6 months?
Yeah, what I'm trying to figure out is, what question are you asking today? What's wrong with that? Like, you just say you don't like it, but what's really the danger of it? How can they control you like that?
Well, see, what you're saying is, well, as long as you don't break the law, you won't have anything to worry about, right?
No, because you're not breaking. You can't really break the law on the internet unless it's like kiddie porn, stuff like that. But like that, like, give you an example. What I told you 3 days ago, it said F Israel on this guy's truck. I took a picture of it, which I rarely do, and I looked at the police non-emergency number. I gave it to them. They went over there and just did a spot check on the guy's house and everything else. I saw some check. I was never looking for someone to be arrested, right? But a good old welfare check doesn't hurt. They go check it and go, hey, maybe if there was more hate, they mentioned it had to be more directive, like the actual group, The police called me back.
Okay, so to that, we already have hate speech laws in Canada. So why do we need a digital safety commission to determine what's harmful content and what is not harmful content? And how will that digital safety commissioner, whoever that is, define what is harmful and what is not?
Okay, so that word you just used there, how about a safety net? How about we just, because if we had a safety net, they could have came across this gentleman. 3 people wouldn't be dead, including the killer, because the killer dying is sad. A 25-year-old man, that is so sad. Okay, and they should. We could have maybe avoided all of this. For what? So, because I don't want to know. I don't want the government to know that I had a steak dinner last night at Joey's restaurant because of that. And what you said there about, oh well, if you're not doing something wrong, I don't think that does not fall in here within the window of this spec. And yes, you make laws, and as time goes on, we review them. Just like your show, one of your subjects last week was they wanted to bring out the MAID incentive for people
for
that
mental
were
illness. For
mental illness. And
we're not going to do that.
Yeah,
right.
And it was refused. Okay, so that's just a lot of years ago. They're trying to push it a little further. We're reviewing it. We're saying no, that goes a little too far. We're not going to do that. Like, can we not rely on that? Like that we
okay,
are.
So you see nothing. Yeah, okay, you see nothing wrong with it, which is fine. This is one of the questions I'm asking. Do you think it's government overreach? You don't think so. You think, and I'm asking this because you were asking. What are you asking, Rob? Do you think these are legitimate tools that are needed by law enforcement? You cite the case in Montreal. Good one, sir. You've answered the question. Thank you. Be right back. Talkback. See how easy that was. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
So we've been talking about the government's new proposed legislation for things like metadata retention, social media regulation, even online speech, a pair of bills that are making their way slowly, though it may be, through Parliament on things like metadata retention, social media regulation, online speech, digital safety commission. Some people think this is a surveillance state. This is like a surveillance state. But certainly law enforcement says these are the tools that we need in order to keep people safe in the digital age. We're asking what you think. Do you think it's overreach, or do you think it's a step in the right direction in the interest of public safety? Luann, what do you think? Luann in Calgary. Thanks for calling, Luann.
Hi, Rob. You know, it's total overreach. I am so sick and tired. Yeah, I'm sick and tired of government, all levels of government, telling me what I can and can't do, and pretending that they will keep anything safe. They've proven themselves that they never can keep anything safe. And I'm tired of being told as a parent what I can let my kids read, let my kids say. It's like, stay in your lane, government. This is none of your concern. If you want to educate parents, educate parents. If you need some backup, make a law that says if you've done something wrong, then you'll be punished. But to actually get in my home, in my kids' life, in my kids' school, now in my social media, knock it off. Like, this is just way overreach, and I don't accept any of it.
Okay, so let's take, for example, something like an age limit for social media, using something like an age verification system that would have to involve some form of ID, whether that's government ID or a fingerprint or whatever the case might be. What are you concerned about there?
Because we all know that there is so much stealing of identities, stealing of personal data. This doesn't preclude that. This makes it easier. And so for governments who can't keep anything secret, can't protect us, we're all getting, fraud calls, we're all getting taken advantage of. We all have to be so alert. Why on earth would we say the government that can't control that can control this and not keep us safe?
Right. So you're worried about, in other words, the security of the data, and would it be hacked, or would it be subject to abuse, or whatever the case might be, right?
Absolutely, and again, stay in your lane. There are things that are parents' responsibility. Yeah, there's parents' responsibility.
So you think, if I could, keeping children safe from the harms of social media starts at home and not in a bureaucrat's office in Ottawa. Is that fair enough?
I absolutely do. And, if we don't start getting back to core values, then we're going to have a government who tells us when and what to think, where we can and can't go. They're almost doing that now. We need to knock this off. We do not live in a deep state. For heaven's sakes, knock it off and stay in your lane, people.
Okay, Luann, some passionate opinions there. Some passionate opinions in the first hour. We'll pick it apart a little bit more because there is so much to it, and we would welcome your calls in hour number 2 of Talkback today at 1-833-668-2577. I'm Rob Snow. This is News Radio.
It's time to talk back.
On Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now
And have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
So welcome to hour number 2 of Talkback. It's a meaty, wonky topic today that we have for you. Digital safety? Is the government pursuing a digital safety agenda or starting to build the components of a surveillance state? Because that's the accusation, that it's building a surveillance state with its new laws on things like metadata and social media regulation, online speech. How do you view these measures by the government? Overreach? Start of a surveillance state? I mean, that's a damning accusation, is it? Or legitimate tools needed by law enforcement to keep people safe in the online world. For example, think about this plan. The government wants to force all the big communications companies in Canada, tech companies, social media platforms, internet service providers, cell phone providers, to retain your metadata for 6 months. That's in one of these bills. 6 months. Government originally wanted it to be 12 months. It's going to be 6 months. Police and intelligence agencies wanted it to be 2 or 3 years. That would be more helpful to the police or an organization like CSIS. So metadata. Maybe you have an idea of what metadata is. I'm not an expert, but this is my understanding of it. Let's say I'm using Facebook Marketplace, because I do use Facebook Marketplace from time to time. And lately I've been looking for a used truck. So let's say I'm on Facebook Marketplace. I see a truck that I'm interested. I message the guy. I message Bill, who has the truck for sale. And I say, I'm interested, Bill, in your truck. Is it still for sale? What sort of metadata would be retained there? Not the body of the message. Okay, that's not part of the metadata. That's not being retained. But what would be available would be information like my IP address, what type of device that I used, a laptop, an iPhone, an Android phone, what type of operating system, what app I used, or if I used a browser, how long I viewed the truck, did I look at any other pictures, did I check out Bill's profile? What time did I message Bill? It would have Bill's IP address as well, and all sorts of other stuff in there that law enforcement says would be useful. Router information, server information, this sort of thing, but not the content of the message, not my actual message to Bill. Hey, I'm interested in your truck, but all sorts of other information. Does that sound reasonable to you? That all of the platforms, all of the companies in Canada have to retain all of that data for every Canadian for 6 months in case law enforcement needs it. What do you think of that? Is it reasonable to you? That bill has passed through the House of Commons. The Liberals shut down the debate on it on the very last day, called it quits for the summer. That bill's off to the Senate in the fall, where it will get, one assumes, some sober second thought. It's a rather benign example. I doubt the police would be interested in me asking Bill about a 2005 Ford Ranger or whatever that he has for sale. But that's one example. Metadata. That's metadata. What do you think about something like that? Linda in southern Alberta. Hello, Linda.
Hello, yes. Yeah, I think a couple of your callers already nailed it as far as security reasons for the person. You know, I think the government's very incompetent when it comes to keeping our identity and everything secure. So I'm not in favor of it at all. I think that if they were looking at the content of what you're saying online, I would be more in favor of that, because I think
Oh, really?
people have said people have said, because of if it's hate messaging or something, there's certain words or something they're picking up from you saying, I think we need to flag this person for certain reasons.
Right.
But not collect everything else.
Think about what you're suggesting, though, even in that case, looking at the content of people's messages. I mean, let's go back in time here. I mean, what would you think if the government was tapping everyone's phones and listening into everyone's conversations?
I know that. It sounds bad, but the only thing is I'm thinking of like in BC where they had that, and now people are suing, companies or whatever because they were saying this guy was saying stuff online and you guys didn't pick it up.
Oh, you're talking about the Tumbler Ridge.
Right,
Yes.
And so then to me, it's like the tech companies, they have you, they know just about everything about you already. Do they not?
Oh, they have all. Well, I went through all the information that they have.
Well, yeah, but not only that. When you're using your phone, their mics are collecting.
Do you want them to have to retain it for 6 months at the behest of the government? Is the question.
Well, no, I think it's only like within that length of time, you should already know whether this person has a problem. There's a problem there or not, right? Mm-hmm. And I don't think they should be storing it because. What did they say? They can't afford to store it, so they're going to outsource that. And then where is it going?
Well, this is one of the great concerns. Where is it going? Where is it going?
Yeah.
And that sort of information would be a gold mine.
Well, definitely.
Not only for legitimate companies, but people with more nefarious motives, right?
Well, you've seen that already where people within a company sell, somebody else's information. Next thing you know, that person is... Their identity is gone, right? And this to me is government's very incompetent when it comes to keeping our information secure. So, and to me, it's more like, are you just finding work for somebody, give them a job and pay them out? I don't know.
Okay. Thank you, Linda, for your call. And just like that, we're underway with hour number 2 of Talkback. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
We've been talking today, getting your impressions, gathering your concerns, if you have any, about a pair of bills that the government is advancing through Parliament, C-22 and C-34. C-34 deals with social media regulation and the age limit for social media access. You have to be 16 to use social media. C-22 is something else altogether. That's called a lawful access bill that would force technology companies to retain your what's known as metadata for upwards of 6 months. And the harshest critics are saying this is the start of a surveillance state in Canada, an online surveillance state in Canada. How do you see it? Let's go to John in Calgary. Hello, John. Thanks for waiting, John.
Hey, Rob. Hey, Rob.
Hi,
great show as always.
Thank you. Your opinion, please.
I'm a big supporter of this. I think we should definitely keep the metadata for 6 months. And let's just use the example of the shooting yesterday in Montreal, that terrible event. Imagine if we'd have had the data now for that person who I believe was 23 from Lethbridge. We could find out who they've sent the manifesto to, how they've been communicating, where these people are, and what that support is. And we could have by now launched some action to go find those people and, deal with any additional threats that we see. That's the kind of advantage that you get from keeping this data. Imagine that we could get into that person's phone. Because they're gone now, so we don't know the password. So there's all sorts of advantages to having this data available to us. And you listed, Rob, the kind of data that's included, but also GPS location is included. And that's perhaps the most valuable to find out where these people are. If your listeners...
Because that terrible event has happened in Montreal, does that mean everyone's data has to be retained? Just in case something like that happens?
Well, there's 2 points to that. Firstly, it already exists, right? This isn't new information. And then the question has to be, is there a right to privacy if you use the public internet? The answer, well, probably not, no. So why do we think we have a right to privacy over this? The advantages far outweigh the disadvantages.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, for your call. John in Calgary today. That's an interesting example. Okay, what has happened in Montreal? It's all over the news now. Manifesto, misogynistic, hated women, hated the police, hated the capitalist system, calling for violent revolution, had a manifesto. And you could bet the police, intelligence agencies are very interested in knowing everything they can know about the person who committed that act of violence in Montreal yesterday. Was he a loner? Did he keep to himself? Did he share this manifesto with other people who share the same sort of radical, violent worldview? Who was he in contact with? Did he message anyone? What platform did he use? Did those people answer him? Was he having long group chats online about this stuff? If he was radicalized, how did that happen? Did someone encourage him? If he did travel to Montreal from Alberta, what route did he take? Where did he stop? Who did he communicate with along the way? All of this sort of stuff. Having the ability to have 6 months worth of metadata in that case, to the caller's point, and the previous caller's point who raised this, I believe it was, who was it? It was Herman who said this. That would be very useful for law enforcement as it tries to figure out why this happened, who this guy was. I can understand that. The controversy stems from whether we need these companies to save 6 months worth of data on metadata on all of us because of the possibility that one person could do what that person in Montreal did yesterday. Dan is in Cambridge. Hello, Dan. Hi, Dan.
Hi, how are you, Rob?
I'm very good, Dan. What do you think here, Dan?
You know what? It's a real difficult thing to get a finger on, only because I think it might be the government's response, I hope, to all the fraud that's been happening, and people are crying out for protection, and maybe this is a way for the government. Now, believe me, I agree with your last caller, not your last caller, one of your callers that said, I don't want to wake up in a George Orwell novel either, right? But I also think that if somebody chooses to enter the marketplace, like Facebook or what's that other one, Kijiji, whatever. Now they've what's the word I'm looking for, Rob? They've decided that they want to enter into that marketplace. So if you want to keep the information on that transaction,
there's a reason when you use, say, you sign up for one of their platforms, whether it's Facebook or Amazon or Kijiji or whatever it is. They say, do you agree to our terms of service? Right?
Yeah, nobody reads.
And then they give you, 60 pages of small print. These are our terms of service. You're never going to read them anyway. But you are signing up to be in their ecosystem, right?
Exactly. And it seems like the problem begins when they retain the information. Because if you're pretty naive if you don't think it's happening already, that they have the information, but it's the one woman made a good point. I'm not going to talk your ear off, but she said they have to outsource to be able to do it. So now, it's in the public domain. Yeah, it's a big, sticky.
Yeah. There's a lot to it, isn't there? I mean, are you uncomfortable? Are you uncomfortable with it?
A little bit, but if it's in response to the public's outcry for some protection online against fraud, which is everywhere, and I don't know anyone who hasn't been touched by it, then that's a good thing. But if it's just,
things like, identity fraud, people hacking into bank accounts, those sorts of things. Yeah. I can understand if you're hoping for a solution on that. It's one of the things I've been thinking about, cyber crime. Thank you for your call in Cambridge, Ontario today. That's Dan, 1-833-668-2577, and have your say on Talkback on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
When it comes to regulating the internet in the interest of public safety, is the government going too far? Because some people say it's building a surveillance state. This is a surveillance state. Law enforcement would say we need these tools. to help keep people safe, to help conduct our investigations. Where are you on this? Zach in Calgary up next. Hello, Zach.
Hi, Rob.
Yeah, hi, Zach. What do you think, Zach?
Are we becoming a surveillance state? Well, unfortunately, I think we are already kind of there. I mean, it's not so much a light switch, but more like a dial. I don't know. Each successive generation, it seems, gives up liberty in the interest of public safety or good. I've seen it in my own life, and it seems to be both political sides that do this. You know, particularly left-wing governments. But I mean, right-wing governments are kind of, can be authoritarian, but these left-wing government regimes, are like totalitarian. Like they seem like absolute control over all aspects of life. And, having access to your metadata, I think, is a good way for them to do that.
Okay,
you can get a lot of...
How so? What would concern you about that?
Well, it's, you can't read somebody's mind, but if you can see where they walk, how often they go to the bathroom, where they're driving each day, who they're talking to, what are they saying, that's, like I said, you understand from a law enforcement perspective where that information can be useful, but I think it goes far beyond that, and most people instinctively know it. I and others, I find the speed and the rate that they're developing these data centers to be kind of interesting. I guess the question would be, what kind of data are they storing? But
yeah, there is a data center backlash. And I mean, there's one happening that's very high profile in your province right now. Where's that? Is it in Olds? I think the data center backlash is happening right now. Yeah.
And you had a caller.
Some of these data centers are for AI. I don't know how many of them are for the retention of metadata per se, or whether there's even a difference between the two.
I think they could be very well integrated. Like, you had a caller a couple months ago that said something that like stuck in my head big time, and he was talking about AI agents. And you think about regimes in the past and how they had total surveillance over your life with just a person. Now, what if the government was capable of making an individual AI agent to monitor a household or a family or an individual, and using your metadata? How fast are you driving? Did you speed on this road? I don't know. It's just, there's so many dark ways.
You have concerns. You have concerns. Yeah, okay. Let's go to Karen. We don't have a lot of time, Karen. And if you want to come on after the news, I'll certainly be more than happy to do that. But go ahead, Karen.
Hey, Rob. How you doing?
Yeah, very good, Karen. Thank you. Your opinion,
Good. My husband and I were talking in the car, and he was referring to your story about you buying a car from Bill. Well, guess what's going to happen? You buy a car from Bill for $7,000, and guess what? Bill gets a bill from the government for tax on $7,000 of income. It's going to open the door for them to steal all of our extra, they can't get the garage sale money, so they'll get the Kijiji and the marketplace money.
Okay. It's not, again, that they would have, immediate access to our metadata. It's that they would require these companies to at least have it on standby in case they feel the need to have law enforcement launch an investigation, or the law enforcement needs to launch an investigation. That's my understanding of it, Karen, but I appreciate your concern. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
When you really start digging into the nitty-gritty, okay, why are privacy watchdogs, experts in personal privacy and data privacy, and some of the leading academics in the country and things like internet law and government regulation, and the leading civil society organizations, civil liberties organizations in Canada, why are they so concerned about the government's Bill C-22 and Bill C-34? What has them up in arms? One of the things that you will uncover, and I should say the tech sector in general, is this so-called secret order regime that this legislation would set up. And when you hear, secret orders, what the heck is that? Well, if the federal government felt that law enforcement needed to get online information about a Canadian that it otherwise wouldn't have access to, maybe it's encrypted or it's been deleted or destroyed, the government wants to have the power to order these companies to build so-called backdoors into their systems, okay, to give investigators, maybe that's a local police force, maybe it's the Mounties, maybe it's CSIS. They want a backdoor into these systems in order to get that information. And the tech companies are pushing back against that big time. Another concern they have is that these companies would be subjected to a gag order. They wouldn't be allowed to tell Canadians, hey, we're being forced to compromise your online security by way of a secret order from the Minister of Public Safety. Now, the Liberals claim, well, we back down on that a little bit by saying these companies wouldn't have to comply with the order if the order would, quote, introduce a systemic vulnerability related to whatever service these companies are providing. These companies have responded to say, well, that's not good enough. You haven't defined what a systemic vulnerability actually is. But I don't know, when I hear things like secret orders, gag orders, your spidey senses start tingling, don't they? The government, of course, it calls the critics of this conspiracy theories. It likens them to people who wear tinfoil hats. But if the government is going to give itself the authority to issue secret orders about breaking encrypted communications, I would say, well, what sort of reaction do you think you're going to get to that kind of stuff? What do you think? Does this sound like the government is going too far? Is it overreach? The harshest criticism is that this is the start of a surveillance state in this country. The government, law enforcement agencies say, no, these are legitimate tools that we need to conduct our investigations. As to a previous caller's point from Cambridge, so much of this crime is happening in the digital world now. It happens more and more online, and we need laws in this country that reflect that it's the year 2026, not 1956. What do you think? 1-833-668-2577. Stephen is up next in Calgary. Thank you for waiting there, Stephen. Appreciate your patience.
Hi,
Stephen. Yeah, your thoughts, please.
Well, I retired from a major internet service provider in Calgary. I was in tech support. I always love it when people say, oh, your internet service provider knows, where you've been, whether you've been on an adult site or Facebook or X or whatever. No. All we got to see is the date and the time, what's called the MAC address and the IP address, but we got no idea what you've been doing at all online. So I'm not concerned about metadata. If the government wants additional things, then of course they'd have to go obviously to build a lot of infrastructure, and then of course they'd have to go to people like Windows and Google and so on to get that sort of backdoor access. But right now, if someone called in and said, hey, I went to this site, and all we can do is just check to see whether the site is down, because that's actually not us. It's a site. And so I just love it when people say, well, it's, government overreach, and we got no idea what you're doing.
Yeah, but certainly online companies would know what sites people have visited. People know, some of these companies, they know how long I've looked at a particular product online, whether I put it in my checkout, whether I bought it and recommended it to somebody else, whether I put it in my shopping cart and then removed it. All of this sort of stuff. They have all kinds of metadata, right? Yeah,
that's right. They have it, but not the internet service provider doesn't have that at all.
Well, whether it's the ISP or the cell phone company, there's all kinds of different sorts of metadata, right?
Yeah, there's all sorts of different, certainly metadata, but I said the ISP or ISP, no idea what you're doing, online at all.
The ISP has no idea what people are doing online?
Nope. No, we don't. We don't know whether you're on Facebook or whether you are on X, whether you're on WhatsApp or Zoom. No. We just get to see date and time, MAC address, IP address, whether your service, let's say, went down, what's called a retrain. But no, nothing inside your home. We don't know what you're doing on the internet.
Okay. But, well, how do you feel about, because this captures much more than ISPs. I mean, this is basically any company in Canada involved in digital communications is captured by this.
Yeah, that's right. It is also.
And so how do you feel about that? And that data having to be retained for 6 months. How do you feel about that? Do you think that's reasonable? Some people say it's totally reasonable. Others have grave concerns about it. What do you think?
Well, I don't know whether they can even do it because of the amount of data and the storage. Like, how can that even be done? You're going to have to do a data farm, which is going to take 1,000 acres. I mean, and also you got to keep in fact that some of these companies, they're not even in Canada at all. They're in other countries.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to try to apply Canadian law to a company that's in another country.
They're going to try. Not only are they going to try, sir, they passed a bill through the House of Commons. Now, it hasn't gone through the Senate yet or received royal assent, but not only they're going to try, they are trying, and they vow to pass this legislation using their majority. Thank you for your call. 1-833-668-2577. Lots of time to fit you in here before the top of the hour. This is News Radio.
Something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Let's go to Mike in Calgary up next. Hi, Mike. Thanks for waiting, Mike.
How you doing, Rob?
Yeah, very good, Mike. What's your opinion here?
Good. Well, definitely not for all this. I think one of the key thing is, I think, is that all the metadata is already. It's already out there. We can see it, like you said, when you go and you look up purple hammocks randomly, and all of a sudden that's all you see on your ads in all of the websites and stuff like that, right? So the data exists. The question at this point is, who is going to store it? Who is being expected to store it for 6 months? One of your callers had mentioned, third party, which is obviously just another red flag, or the government themselves, another red flag. So with all of these companies that already have all of this data, I would think that if they were kind of doing this in the wake of these tragedies that have recently happened, they would focus more of their time and efforts on the AI and on the algorithms that are, like, if they're thinking that somebody is going to be having some sort of manifesto or looking up nefarious things on the internet, that they would be using AI in a positive manner and red flagging these people before they act. And I think that technology exists. It's just not being used and might cost money. But that versus having just a bunch of storage of people's information, I absolutely think that storing of information is not a good fit, especially with the government's name on it.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting points all around, Mike. Thank you for your call too. Justin is up next. Let's take Justin's call. Hello, Justin.
Hi there.
Yeah. Hi, Justin. Yeah. What do you think, Justin, about what you're hearing today?
It's kind of a 50-50 situation. A lot of people overestimate what metadata actually contains, but it's also, as it maintains for the IP address, a lot of the reason police are interested in it is they go into a house and they find a phone. Now they can use that IP address to say, okay, whose phone is this? What's it connected to? That allows some investigation alleys, but it also, when you're dealing with scammers, or lately we had the giant case in Okotoks where the individual was caught with over 500,000 child porn images. having that information where the IP is, who's he connecting to, and where's this stuff coming from?
Yes.
Is very important for, I think, all of us to try and cut it off at the source instead of just dealing with the residue at the end. But it's not going to affect the big guys like Twitter or Facebook. They already maintain the metadata. This is going to affect more companies like Snapchat, WhatsApp, all those companies that say they are anonymous.
And why do you say that? Oh, I see. Because of the encryption, the level of encryption, you're saying?
Not so much the level of encryption. If you've ever selected the Remember Me button on your computer for login, your metadata is now stored until it asks you to log back in, because it's now saying this IP wants to access this account. So you're already giving permission to that service to log your IP and your MAC address for that account for the next 6 months, year, or whatever button you select for under the Remember Me. But where Snapchat or WhatsApp maintain a level of encryption, we're not asking to break that encryption. We're just asking to know what device is connected to what other device. Like, what 2 points of contact are connecting. And realistically, with a VPN, you can get around that. So it's kind of a catch-22 where it's going to catch more of the ignorance than the informed, but it's better than nothing at this point. We're still playing catch-up on that.
So further to that, because this, where there are services that have this level of encryption to it, and that's part of the selling point, I would assume, of the service, to hide your identity or be more anonymous online, right? What do you think about this idea of the government being able to issue a secret order, a ministerial order, and then tell the company, you can't speak about this, and we would like a back door into your system. You have to build us a back door into your system. What do you think about that?
It kind of already happens with phone tapping. We're just kind of catching up to the age where if someone has to be phone tapped, we're not going to advertise. Well, I'm saying we, but in general, the police are not going to advertise that we're tapping your phone. Don't say anything incriminating on it.
Yeah.
It's the same thing if you're going in, and they're not going to be accessing everybody's data. That's just too much to look through. And it's more arduous. Plus, it would never hold up in court. So it'd be, we need to know this one person, who is he contacting with? Don't let them know. Or what are they saying? I'm pretty sure it's probably already happened across the world many times with gag orders on any type of encrypted wiretapping, for lack of better terms. I don't see where a lot of people are taking it to scale where it's going to happen to everybody, and I don't see the police or anybody having enough time to go through all of our daily activities online for, what is it, an average of 5 hours a day?
One of the concerns has been raised is if you're ordering a company to build a back door, then you're swinging the back door open, not just to law enforcement, but potentially other nefarious characters. That's one of the concerns that's been raised today, and as this bill was making its way through the House as well. I'll have to wrap it up there. I'm sorry, we're over time. Very interesting points of view, though, and I appreciate them and take them to heart. We'll be right back. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Yeah, it was very helpful today to get calls from people with experience and in-depth knowledge into IT infrastructure and get their say on the matter today. It ties into conversations that we have had here on Talkback going back several months now. For example, on age limits to use social media, whether you thought those would work or not, what some of the concerns were. I expressed at the time, I would love it if there was some sort of age limit for social media, because I think the harms of social media on the well-being of children have to be obvious to everyone by now. It's just the more and more I learn about what is happening in other countries, the more I read about the concerns with the government's plans to regulate social media, I guess the more doubtful about whether this is the right way to go about things. I just become more doubtful. For our purposes today, online safety, protecting children, and this idea the government is seeking more and more control over the internet. This is sort of how it all ties in with social media, the age verification system. How is that going to work? Because you would think it's going to require some sort of ID, government-issued ID, and then maybe some two-step authentication process, right? Fingerprint, facial recognition. And you have the same people warning about this. Where is all this data going? If everyone is going to be verified, say to use social media, everyone would need to verify their age. Is everyone going to have to prove that they're over the age of 16 to use social media in this country? And what does that look like? Do you want a law that forces every Canadian to hand over whatever government ID they have to a third party? Whether that's the social media platform, at the app store level, at the device level, and then have that ID paired up with facial recognition or a fingerprint. The critics, and these people are not tinfoil hatters. They are serious people with expertise in privacy law and civil liberties. And they're saying this amounts to data collection on a scale that we've never experienced before in Canada. Where is this data going to be held? Who is going to have access to it? How secure will it be? How secure will it be from hackers? How do we know this information won't be sold or abused in some way? You're talking about the personal information of tens of millions of Canadians. In the name of keeping children safe from the harms of social media, which may be a noble goal. But what about the possible pitfalls from a digital privacy point of view? Something to think about. I am away tomorrow, just one day. I will be back on Thursday with another Talkback. The latest breaking news is next on News Radio.